race number 4 of the 5th season of the Dark Horse Racing Series presented by Troy Lee Designs heads to the home of the Arch. This is Gateway Worldwide Technology Raceway as we get ready for some mile-and-a-quarter racing. First time we've been to a track of that length during the course of this schedule. I'm Seth Colbean, joined as always by Scott Rankin. And Scott, here tonight under the lights, nighttime racing for these drivers. And 3 races in, 3 different drivers that have gone to victory lane, drivers that we've seen season after season, have been in the conversation for the championship, but we talked about this at the end of last week's race. Gateway seems to hold a special place on the schedule in terms of at least giving us an idea of someone that's going to be at the forefront later on in the year with the championship on the line.
Look, I was wondering how long it'd take for the crystal ball to come out, Seth, and it's
not a crystal ball, it's stats! It's proof! There's proof there, it's not a prediction!
Yeah, look, just because the crystal ball has an abacus inside of it doesn't mean it's not a crystal ball. It's still the crystal ball, it just has proof. Right, so yeah, look, interesting to note, I mean, Gateway is one of the more tricky tracks on the circuit. It's not quite a short track, it's not quite an intermediate, it sort of just sits in this funky place right in the middle. It's difficult to overtake here in the current gen car, in the IR18, but that's not the car that we're driving here tonight. What that means, though, qualifying is going to be very, very important. These cars don't like to follow, normally in the IR18. You got that weight jacket you can tinker with, you can create some more grip, you can make the car rotate a little bit better. These guys don't have that benefit. You're going to see dive bomb attempts down into turn number 1. You're going to see those guys that get to the bottom of turn number 1, they're going to struggle to get the car up and off the exit, and then they're going to try and keep the car there. It's going to be a difficult track to overtake on. Tires are going to play a big, big part, and I love that. The racing here in the DW12 League is just on point.
You know, one of the unique things about Gateway as well is the rumble strips they've got down there on the inside of the corners. I mean, how apt are these drivers going to be to put the left side tires down there, or will they use that as a guideline to just barely be to the left of that?
Well, I mean, Seth, if you're barely to the left of that, well, you've probably got a tire in the grass. So other way around,
yeah,
buddy.
Well, dyslexia just kicked in. Sorry, the right of the rumble strip.
Right. Look, I mean, you can touch it, but you can touch it for the barest of moments. I mean, I'm just sort of watching cars as I'm watching Matt Wagner go tumbling through the infield across the backstretch at the moment. So it's a difficult track. It's really about throttle patience. It's about throttle patience and setting the car up. There are 2 different ways that you can drive both of the corners. There are multiple different ways that you can drive the corners here. And generally when you go to tracks in the IndyCar stock cars, normally it's get to the bottom, get there, do this, do that, and the car's going to drive off better. There's really only one line. And after that, there's a sort of a compromise line when you've got a huge run and you're trying to make the overtake. Here at Gateway, that's not the case. Gateway, you can have a dive bomb style line whereby you're going deep on entry to the corner, you're going to slide up in the middle of the corner, and then you're going to struggle on the exit. It's the overtaking line. It's a suicide line, as some drivers might call it. Then you've got the over-under line. Somebody's trying to send a dive bomb down you let it happen, you brake early, you get back underneath them, you get on the gas early, you get a huge run down the straight, and you crisscross them effectively. And the same is true down in 3 and 4. There are 2 different lines. You're going to see that when these guys get into formation and start racing for the first time, but it's time for qualifying.
It is indeed. Now, with all that being said, I think a couple of things that really stand out to me in the last couple of weeks was early on in the races at Las Vegas. We ended up seeing a very early exit from Matt Wagner. Last week, we saw an early exit from Charles Teeton. Later on, a dominant Luis Gonzalez-Nunez making a fatal mistake that pretty much cost him that victory. No faster pair. We've talked about that all season long. With that being said, and all of the different ways that this track here tonight can get you, what can we expect to see early on? Is it going to be a kind of laid-back first half of this race to try and survive till the second half, or will we see, with the cars all close together, the aggressiveness kick off as soon as the green flag drops?
Look, there's 2 different ways you can go after the race, and definitely protecting the car is going to be first and foremost in a lot of these guys' minds, because at the end of the day, you know, if you cross the line with a damaged race car, generally it's going to be 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, way down the order. These cars, they're quite prone to damage, particularly on a racetrack like this, where they need all of that aerodynamic downforce and bonus pressure that's going into those tires to make a better contact patch to keep that mid-corner speed up. So yeah, look, protecting the nose cone, protecting the side pods, all of that is critical. But at the same time, restarts are the biggest time to make the biggest advantage, if you will. Cars are all stacked up. They're very close together. Sometimes you're going to get a better run than the guy just ahead of you. Cold tires are a huge factor here. Some drivers struggle on cold tires. Then they instantly get their tires warm. They're very, very good on them. And there are drivers that are medium on the warm tires and very, very strong on the cold tires. So you're going to see some aggression. I would be keeping an eye on who does it on the first restart, because generally those guys might be the guys that are looking to do it. If a guy struggles on the first restart and then starts to pick it up, that's a driver who's learning from the car the whole way around all the time. They're looking at their throttle inputs. They're also responding to the track conditions. More rubber gets laid down on the track throughout the session. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that this can go.
Last week, we saw Eric Schaus finish runner-up to Matt Wagner. He currently sits top of the board. There's Gale Brooks, going to clock in third currently of the 5 drivers that have taken time. Gale Brooks, very consistent start to the season for him. Of course, last week, another top 5 finish, comes into this race third in the overall standings, 65 points behind the current race, or points leader, I should say, Nick DeGroot. Matt Wagner moving up a spot in the standings with his win last week, now 49 points behind DeGroot, and Craig Forsyth with his win a couple of weeks ago at Las Vegas. He right now sits 5th behind Eric Peterson, so only 71 points separating the top 5 in the standings coming into tonight's event.
Yeah, that's critical, and look at the battles. You know, the fact that you can say Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Craig Forsyth, Eric Peterson, those guys are separated by 2 points. You know, that is huge. Unfortunately for Luis, you know, he had such a strong showing, and he let it get to him. I'm really keen to see how he responds tonight, because he definitely had that race under wraps, and he got a little bit flustered in traffic, and it's difficult. The situation that he was in, he needed to put the foot down, and he needed to get past the traffic, and you have to be aggressive. There's no other way around it. You've got to be aggressive. You've got to push yourself through it. Last week he responded poorly. This week, can he improve? I really want to see the change in the mindset from him.
There is Nunez, led 82 laps last week, but finished out of the race in the 10th position, and ended up hearing a little bit earlier this week that this is the last time we're going to be seeing this livery on the number 14. Next week, we're going to be seeing him debuting his 2022 wrap, so going to be interesting to see what that looks like, as he currently sits 8th on the board. Here come a couple of other drivers making some late laps. Craig Forsyth in the 27, Jari Brupacher in the 49. It looks like Nick DeGroot, surprisingly enough, you talked about this being a race of track position. The 89 hasn't even gotten on the racetrack. I don't think he's going to set down a qualifying lap here.
I think he's looking for bonus points, so he's looking to start from the rear of the field and then make the most positions gained. And if you actually have a look at Nick DeGroot's point tally, compared to everyone else, he's got double the bonus points that these guys have got. Now, there are bonus points that are actually on offer for pole, fastest lap time. I believe actually Nick might have set the fastest lap time last night here in the IR18. But effectively, I think he's just targeted those bonus points. And the other thing is, when you get down to the tail end of the race, he's going to have practice overtaking cars in the long chain as well. He's also going to have the most knowledge about the most number of drivers. Should a race caution come out, all of a sudden half the field pits, half the field doesn't pit. You've got some of those back markers all of a sudden up towards the front end of the field. So if you've already worked those guys out, you're going to get by them a lot quicker. So there's a few different options, you know, there for Nick DeGroot. And I believe he ran a somewhat similar strategy last night as well, qualified maybe mid of the field, and then sort of slowly worked his way forwards. And it's a little bit different, though, this time around. Obviously, we mentioned the fast repair in the IR18 league. They do actually have the fast repair available to them. So there's bits and pieces going both ways. Right now, big thing from the start here, Nunez didn't get the pole. He's going to be aggressive on the start. Keep your eyes on him. I have a feeling he just wants to get around Schaus, settle into his rhythm, and control this racing.
Had himself a very good money lap there, which jumped him from 8th up to the outside of the front row, but it'll be Eric Schaus who's going to lead us to the green flag. Schaus led 28 laps last week at New Hampshire, en route to the runner-up finish. Jim Brooks and Gale Brooks, it's a family affair back in row number 2 as we take a look at the starting lineup. 15 drivers scheduled to take the green flag in this one, and some good qualifying efforts there out of Jim Brooks, Jim Herrick as well up there inside of the top 5. A couple of guys that have not been able to really get out of the gate here so far this season might be able to eye Gateway here tonight as an opportunity to maybe get their first good finishes of the season. Eric Peterson, the last driver to take time, so Nick DeGroot will roll off from 12th. Jeff Hysong 13th, Jeff Morales 14th, and Jimmy Drynen will be the 15th and final driver here tonight. One thing we haven't talked a whole lot about here this evening, and of course it was a big talking point last week with the low banking at New Hampshire, not a lot of banking to lean into here as well at Gateway, and that's going to be tire conservation for these guys. If we go into a long green flag run, just how much is that going to play into pit strategy, and how tough is this pit road to get onto? How important is going to be execution if we have those green flag pit stops?
How tough is this pit road to get onto? I can say last night I spun out trying to enter pit road under green flag conditions. It's very tough. And it's all about brake bias. So what you're trying to do with these cars here is you actually shift your brake bias more towards the rear end of the car. That promotes turn-in, because when you lock those rear brakes, or when you slow those rears down at almost the same speed as the fronts, running a 50% brake pressure bias is 50% to the front of the car, 50% to the rear of the car. These cars tend, when you want to stop them quickly as possible, run anywhere from the 56 to 58% range. For an oval like this, where you're trying to get the car to rotate on brakes as well, you want to run a much more rearward bias, so somewhere around the 52 to 54% range. The reason for that, your front tires with tight corners like this, they are doing a lot more work. They don't have the same capacity for braking. So you need to shift that to the rear so that the car can rotate at the same time. Otherwise, you have to brake in a straight line. It doesn't really work. That will also help with the tire conservation, though, because if, again, we're taking load away from the front end of the car. Anytime you're taking load away from the front end of the car, that means that the tire isn't overheating, it isn't rubbing, it isn't scuffing, and the scuffing and heavy loads is what causes that tire wear. So there are a few different things that the drivers can do here. Just under driving early, picking up where they're trying to be, set themselves up for the long race with both fuel and tires is critical as well.
It's the fourth race and the fourth different track length here during the season. It's time to go racing here at Gateway. Eric Schaus brings us to the start-finish line, and we are underway here tonight in the LMC.gear.com 150.
Yeah, and have a look immediately. Schaus got a great launch. Have a look at the checkups in the mid-pack, and I tell you what, Forsyth has made contact. I have no idea who that was.
Up and over. Gil Brooks is flipping. There's 4 or 5 cars littering the back straightaway.
Yeah, look, that's all on Forsyth. Forsyth's literally just plowed straight to the back end of Guile Brooks. And
Nick DeGroot was one of them.
You're kidding.
The call to start at the back did not pay out for the former champion, the only driver in the field that formally has a checkered flag here at this racetrack.
He is completely and utterly done. DeGroot will not be making the finish of this race. He'll have to go back to the pit lane, and there's a lot to do for him.
Morales, Gale Brooks, Charles Teed, Gary Corley, and Nick DeGroot. Those are the 5 I've got on my list so far that were caught up in that incident on the back straightaway. And as we go back, I think this might have started with the 71 of Gale Brooks. I believe he might have brushed the wall off of 2, and that just stacked everybody else up behind him.
Well, I'm going to have a look back at it. I don't necessarily think he's made contact with the wall. No, you're right. He's made very, very slight contact. He's had to lift out of the throttle. That's checked him up. And to be perfectly honest, I just heard the drivers talking about it. Craig Forsyth did stuff very, very unlike Craig Forsyth era. You would expect netcode. He's a Canadian driver. He has a lot of problems with his internet connection. There's no netcode in that. There's contact, which is good news for the race at large. Is that Craig can actually race these guys quite close together. Secondly, Gael said, hey, I had to lift out of the throttle. There was nowhere to go there. I had to lift just to try and get back in line. I'm sorry, that's actually partially on me as well, which is exactly what it comes down to as a driver. Whenever you check up, if you check up aggressively, the car behind you has milliseconds to respond. The average human reaction time is between 0 and 0.5 seconds. In that instance, how much time does Forsyth have to react? He's trying to get back in there for the draft as long as he possibly can. He's trying to be aggressive on the restarts. He wants to make not just 1, but 2 overtakes going down into turn 3. It's a little aggressive from Craig. He didn't judge it quite correctly. It's the first racing lap. There's a lot of factors here. You can't just sit down and say, hey, look, it's an easy, penalty on Craig. It's definitely going to be a penalty on Craig. He'll get a strike for that one for sure. But ultimately, there were other factors at play.
You can see there with the onboard of Charles Teed after the contact with the airborne Gale Brooks. He's up and over. The infield there has grass, and that's just going to catch the race car and continue to barrel roll it. And we saw there, we'll actually take an onboard with Nick DeGroot, but we saw it moments ago. He was able to get low enough to get a little bit of contact with Gale Brooks, but then Gary Corley in the 7 coming down the racetrack right into his lane. Nowhere for the driver of the 89 to be able to go. So boy, a lot of drivers, you would think that a somewhat spacious back straightaway, granted half of it is covered in grass, but I think the thing that kind of stands out even more to me is you've got that little bit of an access area there off of turn 2 for drivers and track vehicles to be able to get onto the racetrack, and that's where Gale Brooks' car ended up going, turning off to the right. Even that little bit of extra area didn't save drivers from the 71 coming back across the racetrack.
Well, see, the thing is, if he's impacted it at the wrong point in time as well, generally we find with those sorts of access lanes and areas is that it actually causes more issues because it creates a wall that's sort of angled and it reforces the car back out into traffic. The problem is you need to be able to get out on the track, and you need to be able to grab repair vehicles. That's why they're there in real life. It's to try and get the racing back underway as soon as possible. And unfortunately, in this instance, I think it's exactly that. That it's the car's basically just impacted the barrier. The angling of that barrier is fighting back out into traffic. If there was a gap to the right hand side there'd be no issue. But such is life.
It's incredible. 3 weeks in a row where we kind of reading from the same script of drivers up there in the point standings, out of the race in the early stages. Of course, we mentioned the drivers back at Las Vegas and New Hampshire, with Wagner at Vegas and Teed and Nunez last week in New Hampshire. Out of the race in this one, Gale Brooks, who was up there 3rd in the point standings. He's in the garage area. Bad luck strikes Charles Teed back-to-back weeks early on. He's out. Gary Corley out of the race. And with Nick DeGroot 4 laps down on pit road, to your point, pretty much out of this race, we are guaranteed a different winner here tonight at Gateway. DeGroot was the only former winner here at this racetrack back in Season 2. He would eventually go on to win the championship.
Here we go. Is that crystal ball smoky, or have you got a quite clear reception there today to get through? And,
let me actually go through the stats to kind of back up what I was talking about earlier, because Season 2, Nick DeGroot wins Gateway, wins the championship. Season 3, Robert Maleska III, one of his 10 wins here at Gateway, went on to win the championship. And last year, Henry Bennett took the checkered flag and made a late season charge to try and get the championship from Rick Ravon. It came up just short, but if we look back at the last 3 winners, they finished up inside the top 2 in the final season standings.
And we're back to green, Seth, as well. So this is going to be critical right now. You've got Schaus, you've got Nunez. They're both clear. They had nothing to do with that accident. Everyone from there on back may potentially have damage. Craig Forsyth, remember he was the lead car in that, so you're going to have Jim Brooks that's actually clear of that as well. So this will be interesting. We're now going to get our thinned out field, get back to racing speed. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, interesting point there, looking at some of the drivers that came to pit lane that we may not necessarily have seen get bits and pieces of the incident. Jeff Heisong, Joseph Morales, they made a pit stop, and a 20-second pit stop for Matt Wagner. I didn't see him get involved, but if we go back to last week when he was involved in a wreck in New Hampshire early on, he spent about that amount of time on pit lane getting what we were told was a front wing replacement, so I'm wondering if that might have been the case here again.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back and have a look at that for Matt. I did hear him on the radio. He was right at the bottom of the racetrack as cars started flipping over the top. So there's a good chance, that that's what happened. Yeah, he's had a car land directly on top of where his driver's head would have been. So I don't know, Matt Wagner actually races in VR, so he would have had the under tray of a car riding through his vision at that point in time. I would say that there was some damage. It looks like it would be more damage than just a front wing, so keep an eye on his pace. This is a strong racetrack for him. His preferred racetracks are both Gateway and Motegi. Very similar, just sort of flipped around, if you will. So 1 and 2 here is effectively 3 and 4 at Motegi.
Now, Nick DeGroot, Eric Peterson, who are both involved in the incident, they both are still sitting on pit lane. Peterson right now is scored ahead of Brooks, Teed, and Corley out of the race. But for the case of Nick DeGroot, I mean, still got, 110 laps to go here when they come around this next time. Is there any ghost of a shot of Nick DeGroot in that span of time getting the car repaired enough to get back out on the racetrack and pick up those 3 spots ahead of him, get those points?
Look, it depends. The Indy cars do actually come up with a display sometimes that says, hey, too much damage, we're actually done, we're not going to be able to get this race car back out on the track. Have a look at the battle up front, though, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. I cannot say yes or no that De Groot will get back out on the racetrack, or no, he won't. So we'll keep an eye on that one, but he's losing a whole boatload of points. And look at Nunez, he's having to defend from Schaus. This battle is not going to go away at all, Seth.
Yeah, Eric Schaus, of course, with his good finish last week, up 3 spots to 10th in the overall standings, and Nunez, the hardship last week in New Hampshire, dropped 4 spots from 2nd to 6th. Both of these drivers trying to work their way back up there into the top 5. If I recall correctly, I do not believe Eric Schaus was in the season opener at Auto Club, so kind of a little bit behind the 8 ball to start there, but a decent outing last week, had hard luck at Las Vegas. But if you can keep that consistency up, there's no doubt with seeing what's happened here tonight with Brooks and De Groot, 2 drivers that were inside the top 3 in the point standings. These guys that are still back there, 6th through 10th, still a lot of schedule to go. They've still got a shot to get up there in the championship picture.
This is a really good showing from Eric Schaus as well. I'm just taking a quick look over the point standings and looking into some data. He's actually had 15 incident points for the season. So for those of you who don't understand the iRacing incident point system, it's effectively 1 point for an off track. That's touching the grass. So if he's touched the grass at any point, he'll get a 1x for that. Number 2, at 2x you have light contacts. And a loss of control. So anytime he's sideways in a corner to the degree where iRacing detects that he would no longer have control of the vehicle. And then you have a 4x, which is heavy contact with another car. In the Indy cars, they tend to only get 2 or 4x, generally leaning towards the 4x because they are so fragile in the way that it sets up. And here comes Schaus once again. But he's had 15 incident points across the 3 races. He's entered all 3, so he was at Auto Club. So... oh, look at the run from the top of Nunez, though.
Man, you saw right there. I mean, Eric Schaus even getting loose there on that inside line, had to downshift. He was downshifting from 6th to 5th going into the corners, but even had to downshift to 4th gear there just to get the car to bite again.
Yeah, that's the problem here as well. You're actually shifting quite a lot, and in the IR18, you're actually getting down to 3rd gear in Turn 1 because you want to get that drive off the corner. It also helps rotate the car with the torque and engine braking. Can be a little bit unsettling when the car initially loads up over the banking, so less in that phase of the corner, and then you apply slightly more. But I think Nunez has got this. He's now settled into a rhythm. He's had fresh air to his nose. His tyres are going to be a lot better, I think, than the guys that are following him. But have a look at I'd say Forsyth's going to have a go.
Definitely is, as it's nose to tail, 2nd back to the 4th position. This taking place just a little under a second behind the race leader, Luis Gonzalez Nunez. And it looks like now officially the former champion and the former Gateway winner, Nick De Groot, has called it a night. He will finish in the 14th position. And again, I know that there's the whole bonus points thing that he was probably going for, but I go back and question the strategy of not setting a lap in qualifying, not getting the best starting track position. I think that played a big factor into him getting caught up in that incident and not being able to even make it a quarter of the way through this race.
Yeah, look, it's risk versus reward, and I think Nick was actually going out, and I think he's focusing on racing and working on the overtakes and those sorts of things, and that's what he was after. And look, it's putting himself at a disadvantage and asking himself to do things. And sometimes, a driver gets to that stage where they're like, hey, I actually want to start from the back, and I actually want to have some fun here racing through the traffic. And, those are worthwhile pursuits to absolutely go after, but when you come to a track that's... you say it's a little bit wide. I think in terms of things, particularly off of the exit of 1 and 2, Gateway is one of the narrowest tracks out there. You're always going to drift back out to that wall. There's nothing that can stop you from doing that. And that's where all the cars sort of trend out and towards. And you guys are going to be very careful with their throttle inputs. And look, it's risky. It's one of the tracks where I'd prefer to qualify out front and sit at the back. Somewhere like Auto Club, yeah, not a problem. But yeah, not here at Gateway in my mind.
Yeah, and I'm just going to echo your sentiment there, too, about how narrow this track is. I mean, when you look at it visibly here as a spectator, as a fan, it looks like there's 3 grooves to be able to utilize, but in all honesty, it's almost a 1-groove track in some ways. Everybody seems to want to run the exact same line. There's an optimal line to be able to run, and when you try and do those overtakes and make passes, you're noticing that most of the time it's taking place on the straightaways. They're not wanting to change up their line in the corner.
Well, the problem is, so particularly down into turn number 1, is if you get to the bottom of the racetrack, you have to slow the car up a lot more than the guy that's already on the high side. So the banking's a lot less down at the bottom of the racetrack. There's sort of if you notice, have a look at the way that Luis is taking turn number 1 and 2. He's not getting all the way down to the curbing on the inside. He's sort of leaving 3/4 of a car width to the bottom side. Actually, he's might be backing things off here. He might have pushed his tyres a little bit too hard earlier, and Schaus is starting to come back into it. Or alternatively, he's starting to fuel save a little bit, looking to go. But he's going to have to be a lot more aggressive than that, because Schaus will have another go. So, banking's on your side. The higher you run up the track in turn number 1 and 2, more banking means you don't have to slow down as much, because the car is tilted in towards the corner. It's easier to rotate. You can keep your speed up. So there's an optimal line, how far you go up the banking versus how narrow and how short the corner is. You're still going to make it around the corners. Car's still going to rotate. Here comes Schaus.
He's going to make a move to the inside. Oh, thought about it, but I think maybe didn't quite have enough momentum. Didn't want to be on the inside line to turn 1. Yeah, going to take it a little wide here, try and apex the corner off of turn 2, but taking that wide entry to turn 1, look at this. It's brought Jim Brooks and Craig Forsyth into the mix. All of a sudden, what was a 1-second gap from Nunez back to 2nd through 4th, all of a sudden throw a blanket over the top 4.
I get the feeling either Nunez has burned off some tire and Schaus was just driving conservatively, or Nunez is now being a lot more conservative. He's recognized that we're going into a long green flag run here. This could lead to a 2-stop strategy, and I think that's what these drivers will be targeting. Anything that gets them across that line. However, he's so far off the pace now. He's dipped back into the 25s on that last time by. That would have been to let Schaus go on the entry to 3 and 4. He might be wanting to fuel save, though. Let Eric Schaus lead a few laps, just sit in behind him, save some fuel, because running in the draft will do that. The problem with that is he's not getting the clean air to the nose, and you can see him, he's struggling through 1 and 2.
You know, it's kind of interesting if you kind of look back at last week, 12 degrees of banking at New Hampshire. You got 11 degrees of banking in turns 1 and 2 here, 9 degrees of banking. So not a whole lot of banking here at Gateway, much like last week. And if you'll remember, while Nunez did have a very strong car and dominated the first half of that race, on the long green flag runs, Eric Schaus was consistently the fastest car the longer the run went on. I think we're kind of seeing case in point here. He's doing a little bit better in saving those tires than Nunez has been able to.
Yeah, and look, I mean, like I said, Nunez obviously led a lot of laps last week, very, very frustrated. So he'll feel this one starting to get away from him at the moment. But the big factor here is that this is only run number 1. There's still 2 more runs to come. Oh, Jim Brooks! He likes his... He loves getting low into turn number 1. He loves sending it very, very deep into turn number 1. However, he had to check up there just to make sure that he didn't make contact. You're never going to make the move all the way down there in turn number 1. And that's the thing that he's got to be a little bit more cognizant of.
We've seen it pretty much all season long, and we'll continue to see it. A lot of these tracks, momentum tracks, you have to lift. There's more than likely to be somebody there with the run to be able to pounce and take that position away. How about Jari Brubacher back here? Now, granted, the big wreck that took place at the beginning of this race, his avoidance of it has put him up in this position, but right now, in the 5th spot, looking ahead at that battle for 3rd, this is a great run for this guy.
Yeah, but also you got to feel for the guys that are actually in behind Jari as well, because you've got Jeff Highsong, Matt Wagner, Joseph Morales, Eric Peterson. Peterson's back out there, I believe, at the moment, but he's 26 laps down. He's just going back out there just to get another lap in effectively and make sure that he's ahead of all those cars that reside on lap number 1, which is very, very smart. It's effectively guaranteeing him 10th place. He'll stay on the server. He'll keep an eye out for any of the guys that are looking to rejoin the track, like Nick DeGroot. I think Nick DeGroot is actually still on the server at this point in time, so there's a potential for him to get back out there.
I'm a little curious about Matt Wagner here, and if he might not be holding back just a little bit, because I'm looking at lap times, and he's only running maybe at the most 2 to 3 100ths off of the race leader, so he's certainly not lacking in pace. He is lacking in track position, but I'm wondering if he's in major tire save mode right now or something.
You know what? It could have been epic fuel save mode. Now, he may have backed the run a mile and a half off, because obviously running in that dirty air is quite bad for the car. And you're right, he is starting to close on the guys that are actually up ahead of him. That last time by, he ran 3/10 quicker than Jim Brooks. He ran 4/10 quicker than Jim Herrick. Those guys are locked in quite a heavy battle right now. Anytime you're in a battle, you are massively slower compared to the cars around you. So keep your eyes on that. However, I'm really worried about that engine. I think it might be engine damage. I think it's fractional. If it's not engine damage, it's aero damage. And aero damage, that would actually make a lot of sense. Engine damage, typically a lot more time that you lose per lap. So whether or not he's fuel saving, whether or not he's tire saving, you're right. There could be a lot more there. Don't just sit down and stick a stamp on it and say, hey, he's done. No, there could be something more there.
Eric Schaus about to complete the 33rd lap of this race. Bears reminding everyone that the top 6 from Schaus back to Herrick, they did not come to pit road under the only caution of this race, but we did have Haisong, Wagner, and Morales come down pit lane. So, looking at the 18 and the 60, if we end up having green flag pit stops, they might be able to go a lap or two further than everybody else here in the field. And you got to remember, too, with Eric Schaus, it's been a long winless streak for him. It goes all the way back to Season 3 at Pocono when he last took the checkered flag.
And look, he's a good enough driver. He's been there. He's been consistent. And that's probably been one of the bigger factors. We're actually about to see green flag stops just starting to come out. And I tell you what, if this is lap 35 and all of these guys are starting to come in, remember, this is caution extended as well. We've got about 5-6 laps. The restart was about 6 or 7. So these guys are actually massively extended on these stints. So I'm wondering whether or not we might be right about Matt Wagner. He might be using that clutch quite aggressively just to try and extend that stint out. If he can chop a pit stop out here, he's in really, really good stead.
There comes Schaus. You saw Nunez and Brupacher in the lap before, and of course, drivers having to utilize that access road from the entrance of Turn 3 all the way around here to the exit of Turn 4, kind of Homestead Miami-esque, using that infield access road. And a lot of people like to have where they come right off Turn 4 and come down pit road because that access road is flat. Like to the point you mentioned about last night, you make a mistake there, there's every chance that your car could slide right back up onto the racing surface and in front of somebody.
Yeah, and the other thing, remember I was talking about brake bias? That's a critical factor here, because when you're braking in a straight line like that, the car doesn't like you putting extra braking pressure through the rears. So you've got 2 ways to go. Either you're slowing down earlier and slowing down slower, which makes you slower, because you have to allow that extra time to get the car slowed down, or alternatively, you have to adjust that bias all the way back up so you can get the optimal pit lane entry. That means your first lap back out on track, you're going to be slower. You've got to get that bias down there. It's a lot of tweaking, it's a lot of remembering, and when you're locked in a heavy battle with somebody, sometimes you forget it. Now, keep your eyes on these pit stops because Nunez has been in a couple laps prior, so I think Nunez is locked in. He's going to have to do this, I would say 3-stop strategy. I don't think he's going to have a choice, and this goes green. Remember, we're in a very thinned out field at this stage. This is probably the thinnest the field's been. Forsyth might jump Nunez through the stops.
That was a heck of a pit stop by Craig Forsyth as Nunez jumps to his outside. This is your battle for second after Schaus took the race lead back. After the cycle, Nunez will get the runner-up position, but let's also remember that Forsyth was about 7 car lengths behind Nunez when the pit stops began. He's now right on the back door looking for the runner-up spot.
Yeah, so this is critical. And you've also got to remember that Nunez right now has warmer tires. He was the first of these guys to pit. That was on lap 36. Forsyth came in on lap 38. So Forsyth saved a lot of fuel on that run there. He might opt to just sit right there under Nunez because he knows that Nunez is burning those tires up. Nunez is trying to be aggressive. Nunez is being aggressive in terms of that fuel. He might just sit there for 5 or 10 laps, let Nunez burn his tires off, let Nunez go after Eric Schaus, let those guys burn each other up, and then he might pounce later on in the race. And that seems to be where Craig Forsyth's strength really is.
And it might not just be the situation on the racetrack, but also the situation in points, because Forsyth came into this race 5th in the stands. You look at the drivers ahead of him. DeGroot, out. Brooks, out. Peterson, 37 laps down, still sitting on pit road, and the big question mark of how up to speed Matt Wagner is. He's not in the top 5 right now, currently in the 6th position, so big opportunity here tonight if Forsyth can even just finish up inside of the podium. Big points that he's going to gain on the other 4 ahead of him in the standings.
And critical to note, remember how I said that Matt Wagner might be looking to fuel save? He didn't make the fuel window. So he's going to have to do the same number of stops as the rest of the guys here. He may have to add a splash less fuel, but he is going to have to make the same number of stops. The margin that he lost early in the run did not overhaul the amount of time he was making on these guys later on in the run. So he has got to build his way back in. He's clearly not happy something's wrong, and I have a feeling it might be that error. He's probably praying for a caution to give himself a little bit more time down on pit road, try and get that car as fixed off as it possibly can be. He might have nudged the wall at some stage as well. All of these are little options that might just be going away from Matt Wagner. And remember, it's been probably the unluckiest season of him in a good while. He's normally a lot further up. He's had more wins. He's been in contention a lot more times. But he's just been really, really unlucky as well. So
it's interesting to note there as well. You were touching on it. that the 3 drivers that came to pit road, Matt Wagner, one of them, but also Jeff Heisong and Joseph Morales, all came down pit lane the same lap that Craig Forsyth did. So none of those drivers stayed out an extra lap or 2, despite possibly maybe having half a lap, maybe a full lap extra in the tank when they came down under our only caution of the day. We're now a third of the way through this race. Eric Schaus, the leader. You're looking at the battle for second between Luis Gonzalez Nunez and Craig Forsyth. Yari Brupacher and Jim Brooks right now the top 5, and we've got 9 drivers out there on the racetrack, all 9 on the lead lap at this point in time. If you're just joining us, big wreck in the early stages of this race, taking now not only the points leader Nick DeGroot, but also other names like Gary Corley, Gil Brooks, Charles Teed, effectively taking Eric Peterson out of this race as he still sits on pit lane, and then a couple of other drivers that we know got bits and pieces of the incident, including Matt Wagner. We're still kind of trying to figure out how up to speed those drivers really are. Still a long ways to go in this one, but I'm starting to get the feeling now that things are going to come down to pit strategy, and I don't want to bring out that crystal ball, but I'm going to bring up another statistic here, Scott. Last 2 races, New Hampshire and Las Vegas, we've had the long green flag run, but then we get close to the end of the race, and a caution comes out and changes the whole landscape. Does it happen for a 3rd week in a row?
Look, I mean, right now there's a lot of hard racing going on, and if you keep your eyes on things, you gotta look around the field and you gotta say, where's this caution gonna come from? What is gonna trigger the caution? Right now you got Matt Wagner and Jeff Heisong. They're running really, really close together on the track. Those guys will be communicating though, they'll be working together. Other than that, there's actually no other cars fighting each other right now. However, later on in the run, Nunez, we've seen him very, very quick early in the run. However, towards the mid and latter stages of the run, tends to fall away. Does he overdrive the car a little bit? This guy's a very good driver, mind you. He knows how hard he can push the car. Sometimes, psychologically, you still drive above your limits because you're in that mode of, I want to win. Second is not what I came out here for. So, after last week, after how frustrating that was, has he flipped that switch? Has he turned things around? I'm actually looking at him as potentially the caution, and I hate saying that because I don't want it to be him.
Well, he's got thoughts for the lead as he got a nice run there off of turn 4. Jode the nose there on the front straightaway, but not going to make a move just yet. So Nunez feeling it's time to go. There you see Eric Schaus trying to break the draft down the back straightaway, moving low, darting high. So the battle for the top spot may be on sooner rather than later. And if these guys continue to focus on each other, keep an eye on that blue and white 27. Craig Forsyth, about now 0.8 of a second, could make it a 3-man fight for the top spot.
And Craig Forsyth went to victory lane last night as well here, so he is definitely on song and he's performing well and he's comfortable with himself and he's putting the consistent laps, consistent results in at this track. So keep your eyes on Craig Forsyth. Right now, this is about where Nunez starts to fade away in terms of the run. Anytime from about, so let's say about 5 to 8 laps from now, you'll see him start to fall back in terms of where he is on the track. He's also going to be the guy that tries to trigger the undercut. Why? When you're the slowest car, when you've burned those slowest, I say that, let's put a line through that. When you're the car that burns through the tires the most, that means you want to come to pits early because you've got the most to gain. If your starting lap time is, let's say, a 24.7, and your late race lap time on that set of tires is 24.2, you're losing 0.5 of a second. That's a huge margin that you can make up by being the first to come to pit road for fresh tires. If he can do that, he might be the leader at the next round of pit stops.
Working the calculators a little bit here with Matt Wagner running in 6th and Nick DeGroot right now in 14th. Bonus points notwithstanding, although I don't think either one of them right now would be in line for any bonus points. It would be 15 points that Matt Wagner would gain on Nick DeGroot should he finish in the 6th position. So exactly, 49 points back coming into this race. That would bring him down to 34 points behind DeGroot heading into next week at Kansas. So, not a total loss if you're the driver of the 6th.
And it's critical right now to see if he can keep it ahead of Jeff Heisong. And the other factor is he starting to range back up on towards Jim Brooks? And something we really haven't talked about is Yari. You mentioned him just before the last round of pit stops as well. He was actually starting to get a really good run. He was one of the first guys to come down to pit road on lap 36 with Luis Nunez. So, look, he's advanced himself past Jim Brooks. Those guys, I believe, a little bit spaced out off the rear end of this battle right up at the top, but he's still in the window. He may start showing himself towards the fore. Don't run him out of this one just yet as well.
No, his lap times are still looking very good. He's been in the same range as the top three. Now, granted, Schaus and Nunez, they've been in close proximity here, battling for this race lead. But yeah, that 49, he's not there just riding and slightly off the pace. He is running lap times, if not identical, maybe a tick faster than the top three. And you're right, if we end up seeing some pit strategy come into play, we could be talking about Jari Brupacher up inside the podium for the first time this season. Also a little bit of an interesting note here for these guys here tonight also that I've been kind of looking at. Is it possible? We're on the 20th, for pretty much median 20th lap for these drivers on this run. And looking at 64 laps to go, let's say that they go 35 laps on this run. That would put them somewhere in the range of about, 45 laps left. How much fuel saving can you do at a track like this? What is the maximum amount of laps you could see a driver make on a green flag run? Now, I know they would lose a ton of time on the racetrack, but would it be worth it if there is a max number, let's say of about maybe 8 to 10 laps that you can save on a run? Is it worth losing that time on the racetrack to try and gain it back when everyone dives to pit lane in the closing stages?
No, and critically, it's because you'll actually fade back. I believe there's actually a car slow in turn number 3 at the moment, and it might be Jim Herrick?
It is.
He may have tapped the wall, actually, at some stage, because I was keeping half an eye on his lap times, and he was sort of starting to really, really fade away, particularly over the last couple laps. So I have a feeling he might be coming down for a new nose cone, or you can just see there's a little bit of a kink in the right-hand side of that car. So I have a feeling he's tapped the wall at some stage. He's coming down for a fresh wing, fresh side pods, looking at the damage, seeing what he can do, because downforce is really, really critical here. So, alright, let's talk about race scenarios. Let's talk about saving fuel. What you're going to need to do to save that amount of fuel is you're going to have to run nearly a full second, I would say, off the pace. Now, if you do that for an entire stint, the laps around here are only 25 seconds. The fuel stints around here are 35 plus laps. To make it that far, you're going to lose a whole lap. You're nearly losing that entire pit stop. It's touch and go whether or not it's worthwhile. And the problem is, if you commit to that strategy, you're stuck. There's nothing you can do. Because if you all of a sudden accelerate, you've lost all the time fuel saving already. And you can never get that time back. I think these guys are committed. I don't think you'll see a flex from the push hard, go as hard as you can for as long as you can strategy. I think we're all just stuck into the same strategy for all our drivers here. There'll be a little bit of difference in terms of the lap numbers, and Craig Forsyth will be the one to keep an eye on. I think he'll probably jump Luis in this next round of pit stops.
And the battle's going to be for second place now. Nunez, the speed starting to go away. Maybe the grip there in the tires. He was on the bumper of Schaus to battle for the lead. He's now fallen back into the clutches of Forsyth for the runner-up position, as we are now past the halfway point here in the LMCgear.com 150 at Gateway. And, okay, to your point, don't stretch the fuel to try and make it to the end, but that would then mean that we could see some very interesting strategies in that final run to the checkered flag, because I kind of remember back to Las Vegas where we saw Nick DeGroot pit one lap later than everybody else, took on just a little less fuel, a little less time spent on pit lane, and that got him the checkered flag. Somebody could do that here tonight, because the fuel window is going to open pretty soon, pretty early into that final run after the upcoming pit stop.
Yeah, so we're looking anywhere from about 8 to 10 laps from now for that pit window to start opening up for these guys as well. The guys that are committed to coming to the pit lane early, they're a little bit compromised in terms of things. You're probably going to see them about lap 72, which are about that 7 to 8 lap from right now. The guys that managed to make it those extra laps, Craig Forsyth went 38 laps. Remember, we've also got caution laps in here, so maybe take another 3 to 4 laps away from that in terms of how far they're actually going to be able to go. So anytime, within 3 to 4 laps, 70 even, probably for Luis Nunez is probably what I'm looking at. Forsyth's starting to get a little bit impatient.
Run really low there through 1 and 2. Nunez having a little bit of difficulty running that optimal line. Schaus is coming in. Late move there on the pit lane to the access road, but Schaus is going to hit pit lane. Interesting, because this is going to be completing his 29th lap of this stint. I kind of had him at 35 laps, but again, you pointed out the fact that they were able to save a little bit of fuel under the pacing laps when we had that first caution, so maybe 30 is the target lap that most of these guys can go on a tank.
Yeah, so why he's doing this is Nunez was starting to fall away from him, and Forsyth was starting to catch up to him. So what was going to happen is that Forsyth was looking for the overcut. He's really, really strong towards the tail end of these stints. The car gets a little bit lighter, looking after those tires a little bit more. He's come early, because the earlier he comes, it means Nunez isn't fighting him, because he's going to get in, he's going to get out on fresh rubber, and Forsyth is going to have less of an advantage. Now, what do you do if you're in Craig Forsyth's shoes? Do you back it up? Do you try and extend that realm of time whereby you're going to have better tires than Nunez? Yeah, he could potentially run this one all the way out. Forsyth has got the most flexibility out of these guys. Nunez came to the box straight away as well.
Gary Brubacher just hit pit lane. Looks like we've got 4 drivers that are still yet to make this upcoming pit stop. Race leader Craig Forsyth, Jim Brooks, Jeff Heisong, and Matt Wagner. Nunez just now coming off of pit lane. He's going to get overtaken by Schaus, so Schaus should be the race leader when everything cycles around yet again. Well, actually, Nunez got out ahead of Schaus. Out of car length separating those two. Well, okay. Schaus' big run there out of 4 is going to be able to make the pass here before they get to turn 1. That was a power move.
Yeah, I mean, he had to make that move because remember, his tires are going to be warmed. So Nunez was having to try and defend that one on cold tires at the same time as the problem for Nunez is that he just wasn't quite up to speed yet. So you say, oh yeah, huge run. Really, he was still coming back up to speed. You take turn 3 and turn 4 and, 5th, 6th gear, nearly running through there about flat. Depending upon the car. And Jim Herrick's actually going to play a huge factor here for these two.
Eric back out onto the racetrack. Currently 1 lap down to the leaders as he's going to move up to the outside, get out of the way. This right now is a battle for the 5th position after the top 4 have hit pit lane, but it should cycle around as the battle for the race lead. Forsyth! Boy, you talked about that access road coming in. How about coming off as the 27 nearly looped it around? Shades of the season opener at Auto Club.
And critically, for these drivers that are trying to get themselves 0x races as well. So there's a few factors to actually break down in this one. That's a 1x. Remember what I talked about earlier on in the piece was explaining the iRacing system, the incident points, and how that relates to things? This series has a bonus points for 0x races. Races completed without an incident point. Why do they do that? It promotes clean racing. Sometimes it's better to take a 5th place finish with a clean race than race somebody hard and potentially have contact for a 3rd or a 4th place. That can be critical. So Forsyth has just thrown that away with how quickly he was trying to get back up to speed there. Now, additionally, he couldn't get up to speed anywhere near as quickly as the cars ahead, so he lost time there. It's in the realm of half to a full second, somewhere in that range. Now he's going to make that up. But he's now going to be running in clean air for the early parts of this stint, just like Schaus is. Nunez isn't. I think this actually works more in Forsyth's favor because Nunez is so close to Schaus.
3 bonus points awarded to drivers that have a 0x for incident points during the course of a race. 7 drivers cashed in on those bonus points in last week's race at New Hampshire. Eric Schaus so far here tonight hasn't put a wheel wrong. Neither really has Nunez. It's just the fact that he's kind of been more the hunter than the hunted for a majority of this race.
I mean, he did a great job on cold tires and on that second restart as well. Really getting that move done. He's aggressive. He wants it.
Man, I don't know. That was close. I don't know if there was contact between his front wing and the back of Schaus or if he could have fit a sheet of paper between the two, but that was mighty close on the front stretch.
Yeah, look, and I mean, you've got to be there because if you're not that close in behind the car and you're not taking every little bit that you possibly can get out of it, then the problem is that you're sacrificing momentum, you're sacrificing draft, and you need that draft advantage to get the move done. As it was, had to get to the inside. He very nearly cleared Schaus to get to the inside and get that move done. But like we've said, that inside is the non-preferred line. This is tight racing. This is aggressive racing. This is driving by both of these guys for a win here. And they're doing a phenomenal job at showing what they've got.
And how important is it for Nunez to be kind of testing the waters, making these type of moves, to draw the attention of Eric Schaus from out the windshield to his rearview mirror, kind of maybe intimidate him into messing up a corner for Nunez to pounce and take advantage?
Well, that's just it. I mean, if Schaus makes a mistake at any point in time, Nunez is going to be there. It's going to happen at some point. Nunez weaving on the straight there. I'm actually more concerned about his engine temperatures. He's been doing that quite aggressively at points where he might not necessarily need to. I am very worried about his engine temperatures. I think he's pushing this thing as hard as it can possibly go. He's leaving it in 5th gear a lot of the time as well, which means he's running the engine at higher RPMs. Higher RPMs means the engine's turning over, more bangs within the engine. More bangs, that means more heat. So he is really pushing this thing. He's trying to extract everything. And if he's got that engine running right up near the tippy top, maybe he needs to back it off for a few laps, run it in 6th gear, just be there and thereabouts, cool the engine all the way down, cool the tires all the way down, get a little bit more life out of them. He might actually have a shot at Schaus later in the run.
We're riding on board here with Nunez, looking ahead to the 72 of Eric Schaus, seen consistently the last couple of laps. Schaus kind of low on the exit of 4, lets it swing up to the wall on the 14, though. He's kind of a little bit wide by the time they get to exit and then drives it to the left. There you see it again. It looks like he might be trying to get clean air to the nose, to your point, to avoid that car overheating.
Oh, look, the other thing is, he's very much offsetting himself out of turns 3 and 4, but then he chases him down the backstretch, so it can't be engine... That sort of behavior really puzzles me, because it can't be engine temperatures if he's willing to do that. He's pushing, he's trying to be aggressive, he wants to get this move done, he's got to go for it right now. If he's weaving to the left here, he's never getting that move done, but it also could be intentional.
Had a nice run there to the back of Schaus, way low in 1 and 2. That's going to cost him a little bit of time. I think he had to breathe.
He's closer. He's a lot closer.
He's in the draft for sure, getting the slipstream, and now he'll send it into 3.
He's got the
Turn
run.
4 is where he likes to make the move, and he's alongside to the start-finish line. He's going to lead that lap, but will he have the lead by time to get into 1?
He's driven Schaus all the way up as high as he possibly can. He needed to get deep on the brakes there into turn number 1. Try and slide job him. He let him have the space, and anytime you let Schaus have the space from the top side, he nearly clear. Is he going to take away the bottom? He doesn't. Schaus leaves it open.
He almost got the pass done. Stuck with Schaus through 1 and 2, which was mighty impressive on that inside line. But now Schaus going to clear him. Nunez has to regroup, try again, but... look in your rearview mirror, because here comes the 27 of Craig Forsyth. Now he comes from almost a second back into this battle for the race lead.
And critically, Forsyth pitted 3 laps after these guys. These guys are pushing as hard as they can. Their tires, they're taking a beating right now. And Forsyth sitting back, licking his lips and saying, hey, you keep going at it, I'm coming, boys.
Craig Forsyth right now in the catbird seat, both in terms of his tire temps and in terms of fuel. We are getting close to when the fuel window would be open for these drivers to come to pit lane. Would you be wanting to come down pit road as soon as we hit 30 laps to go? Run the risk that you might get trapped a lap down if a caution comes out late, or do you want to stretch as far as you can, spend the least amount of possible time on pit road?
Nunez, if Nunez is going to win this race, I think he's going to come in at 32 to go. I think he's going to be in at the end of lap 88. He is so strong on those initial couple of laps. He's very strong on the entry. He's very strong on the exit from pit road. That is his window to win this race. If he gets out in front, Schaus is going to have a hard time getting past.
This is your closest battle on the racetrack right now. Less than a tenth of a second separating your top 3 from Schaus to Forsyth, with Nunez in the middle. Next closest battle is about half a second between Jeff Heisung and Matt Wagner. That's back for the 6th position. So if we're going to see the potential late race caution that we've seen for the last 2 weeks in a row, it would more than likely be up here at the front of the field.
Forsyth's going around the outside here. I was wondering why Nunez defended the bottom going through 3 and 4. I was actually watching it from his cockpit cam as well. He needed to defend from Forsyth, but Forsyth got into Schaus's draft. This is Forsyth's. Schaus, I don't think Schaus has the tires to defend this. Forsyth's in a great position.
I'd have to look back, but off the top of my head, I do not believe Craig Forsyth has ever had a multi-win season here in the Dark Horse Racing Series.
He's gonna have
if he's able to close out the deal here tonight, it may be the first time that happens in his career.
He gets all the way to the bottom, looking for that slide job style of move. Nunez will now have the run. Keep your eyes on that car in the back. The pink and black one now is one of the stronger cars. If he can get a double draft here, he may have a shot. And the door's open by Schaus as well.
And here's one of the cool things if you're Luis Gonzalez Nunez as well. Being the last car of these top 3 and over 3 seconds back to the next running driver, you don't necessarily have to come over comms and say, I'm coming to pit road. You don't have to notify the top 2 of what your strategy is. You can come to pit lane whenever you want, catch these other guys flat-footed.
Do it. Do it, Nunez. Do it. Come this lap. Oh, he's missed out. I think Nunez's best thing to do. He's got to come. I think it's this next time by. If he does that and he lets these guys race each other, they may overdrive pit lane entry, particularly whilst they're racing each other. Whilst ever he's sitting here, he's watching this. Neither lane gets clear out of his wing. He's going to struggle. Come this time.
Stay out an extra lap. It looks like I don't see him coming down to the inside of turn 3. This is where the wheels start turning. This is where the strategy starts to come into play. Now, we are going to hit 30 laps to go here, and we saw most drivers go about 30 to 31 laps on the last run. So we're coming up on the money stop. And I mean, you talked about how difficult it is to get onto pit lane. This is the money stop. You cannot make mistakes this time or else you're basically throwing the race away. Very unlikely a caution is going to come out to save your race. So it's all about the driver and all about execution from here to the checkered flag.
And have a look at the way that Schaus is driving this. He's not giving up the top. Now watch what Forsyth's done. He's had a crack a couple times at getting to the inside in 1 and 2. This time he's trying to drive the line. He's trying to get that run off of 1 and 2, back it all the way up, follow him. And have a look at Schaus. Schaus is covering that pit lane entry. He's saying, hey guys, I'm going to be all the way down here. If you commit to pit lane, I still have the option to come. This is an incredible battle between the three of these guys, and we've still got a pit stop to go.
Do indeed, and let's not forget that Craig Forsyth nearly had a moment after the last round of green flag pit stops where he got his tires just a little bit off on the grass. Is Schaus pitting?
No.
Oh boy,
No.
He faked me out. I thought maybe he was coming to pit road, but instead just trying to break the draft of Forsyth down the back straightaway.
Look, Forsyth's got a huge run. He's going to clear him. You know, Forsyth's going to have his wing ahead here.
See if he's going to be able to make the pass here into 1 and 2. He's right down that rumble strip. Not preferred. Schaus is going to have the run off of turn 2. Did you see how hard he had to yank the wheel to the left, though? Did Schaus come off the corner, though?
Oh my god, he wanted to slide up and take it away. This time he's to the inside of Schaus off of 3 and 4. This time, he's further ahead, Seth. This is so close.
Oh man, that time Schaus got a little loose off of turn number 4, so he's got his hands full not only with Forsyth, the driver's left, but that race car underneath him again. This time Forsyth not able to get back to the throttle. He tucks back in line. I'm still shocked Nunez hasn't come to pit road. He's still right within striking distance of these guys. The fuel window is open.
Yeah, it is, and most of the rest of the field have actually pitted. So that means that any potential for a caution has by and large been eliminated. Keep your eyes in the background on Yaro Brewparker, because I believe he's starting to range up on these guys.
He is indeed right now about 3 seconds behind the race leader. 2.3 seconds off the back bumper.
Luis is in! Luis is in!
Nunez.
Yeah, I remember what I said. Luis had to be the first one to pit. He's the strongest of these three guys in this sector. You will see both cars pit. I want to see Forsyth strive the whole next straightaway to Eric Schaus's left, because if Schaus then wants to pit, he has to yield.
Like he might have nailed it there on entry. Got it right down to 45 miles per hour at the commitment line, but carried a lot of speed on that excess road.
So Schaus recognized the threat of the undercut straight away.
No, he's gonna loop it almost around there on the access road, in the grass, back onto the access road. Big mistake for Eric Schaus.
Now, critically, because he's trying to slow it down, he's actually okay. He's actually okay. He's not trying to get back to the power. So, when Craig Forsyth made that error, when Craig Forsyth was trying to get back to the power, he had to deal with that lack of momentum for 3/4 of a lap compared to the other guys. You will see Forsyth will run this thing dry. No, he's in.
Is indeed, and yeah, half spin there for Schaus. We'll see how that translates to where he cycles around. Will he still be up there in the hunt for this win? Yari Brewpacher is going to stay out an extra lap here, along with Matt Wagner and Jeff Highsong. Brewpacher might be at this point just trying to see if a caution might come out to be able to get him good track position, so he will stay out another lap here in the 49 car. There's absolutely no way that he can get the 22 laps, or the 21 laps now, to the checkered flag without coming to pit road. But you know what? If you're not in the conversation for the victory, why not pull a strategy like this?
Guess what? Eric Schaus jumped by Luis Nunez, and I'm not sure where's Forsyth come out. That's a critical factor as well. So I think Forsyth has jumped them both. So Forsyth has gone from P2 and was fighting with Nunez, fighting with Schaus. There was no real confidence there. All of a sudden, Forsyth has got one hand on this thing.
I'd love to know what went on in the pit stop of the 27, because I'm looking right now. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Eric Schau spent about 8 seconds in their pit stalls. 5.5 seconds for Craig Forsyth.
Fuel
What in
only.
the world would that have been?
Fuel only. That's all it was.
Oh, boy.
If that was the case, I don't know why he was fighting with Schaus, because that actually goes contrary to what his strategy was. So, look, he's made the overcut. He's made it work, but he is going to be so down on tires. He's been the best, though, on the long runs. This is a huge risk.
It is indeed, but again, looking to, and I can confirm it would be the first time in his career that he's had a multi-win season here in the Dark Horse Racing Series. He's also trying to cut into the points lead of Nick DeGroot, as well as the other 3 drivers ahead of him in the point stands. He's trying to establish himself in the championship picture for the remainder of the season. It's a gutsy call. We'll have to wait and see if it works out for him. Right now, looking at his lap times as opposed to Eric Schaus, he's losing anywhere from 2 to 3 tenths a lap. 19 laps to go, 18 this next time around.
Yeah, that's not a lot of margin. This is going to be a dicey race. Now, critically, Nunez is so aggressive on these early tires, so Nunez might get around him just because of the way that he drives the car, but Schaus is now out of the picture. Could all of this still potentially play Schaus back into things? Schaus is fighting with Brew Parker. Schaus is gone. His attempt to win is now gone.
At last time by, 6 tenths of a second, Nunez over Forsyth, and he is flying 2.5 seconds, less than that now. Now cut it down to 2 seconds with 17 to go.
Yeah, I think Forsyth's made a mistake here. He's got 16, 17 laps to go, so this is tight.
Right now, 2 seconds separate the two. There you see, both on the same back straightaway. Forsyth doing the best he can. Now, when Nunez gets to him, how much of defensive line is Craig Forsyth going to be able to put up against Nunez? I'm not necessarily certain. If he doesn't have the fresh tires like Nunez does, I don't think it matters even if he runs the optimal line. I think Nunez would be able to hook the bottom and blow right by him.
Potentially. The area that Forsyth is struggling the most, and I'm just looking at sector times, is 1 and 2. So that's where he's weakest. Now, is that as a result of a weak run off of turns 3 and 4 as well? Forsyth, if this was his strategy all along, he should have just sat in the background and underdrove the car. I don't know why he was aggressive with Nunez and Schaus. He should have just sat there and said, I know something that you guys don't. He has overdriven the car in that second to last stint, and that's going to cost him.
Honestly surprised that he just didn't go with the same strategy that Nunez and Schaus did, because he was up there with those two before the pit stops began. So I don't think he necessarily would have lost time to either one of them. He would have still been in the conversation and been on an equal footing.
Well, here's the thing, Seth, as well, is Forsyth's strongest time on the tires was the back end of the stint. So this last pit stop was a shorter run and a slightly shorter run, which means that he needed to do something a little bit different. Either he needed to be more aggressive, or alternatively, he needed to do something like this. Now, I don't disagree with this call. However, I don't think he knew that Schaus made a mistake coming to pit road. I think if he knew that Schaus made a mistake coming to pit road, he would have taken the tires.
Just saw the pass for third. Yari Brewpacker getting around Eric Schaus, and don't blink. There's Nunez. 4 car lengths, 3 car lengths behind Craig Forsyth. I think he's going to have him set up here for turn 1 when we get to 12 to go.
Yeah, look, I mean, Nunez has had some difficulties with overtaking, and have a look at the line that he's running down here. This is psychological now. Engine temperatures, I don't think it's really going to play a huge enough factor. Potentially maybe trying to cool the tires, cool something off. Yeah, look, there's a case for all of that. Look at the run. I think Forsyth had to defend that inside lane.
He did indeed, but he's... Oh, contact! Forsyth up and over into the wall in turn 3. He tried to throw the block pinch down Nunez. It did not work, and Jim Brooks hard into Forsyth as well.
No. Oh, that's disappointing for Jim Brooks. Does Wagner get through that? Wagner gets through that, okay.
Oh, man. Oh, we talked about the late
Forsyth's
race
done.
caution.
Forsyth is absolutely done.
Well, this one's going to be an interesting one to go back and look at replays of. Did the 14 clip the rumble strip and slide up? Did the 27 pinch him down? We're going to have to look at a lot of camera angles for this one. The 14's come to pit road. He's got damage from that.
I don't know if he's got damage or if he's coming for tires.
I think he actually just made a late audible call to come back out on the racetrack. Wow. It seems like week after week, just when we think we've got it figured out, closing stages of the race, a wreck happens, usually up towards the front, takes out a prime contender, and completely changes the landscape of the finish. And it happened again, third week in a row here tonight at Gateway.
Oh my word. Oh, and you know what? Remember what I was talking about, full size connection, and the fact that ping. This is something that oh my god. So gap wax strikes again. And this is something that Craig has to deal with. This is something that I have to deal with being an Australian racing in a lot of American leagues as well. Is ping, it has to play a part. It absolutely has to play a part because geographical location, there is no way to get around that. There is physically no way to get around that. In real life, obviously, you're all there. There is a 0 millisecond delay in real life when you're racing cars. You can't create anything that deals well with a delay. And iRacing, they've come up with their version of a solution, and a lot of people hate them for it. And a lot of people don't agree with the solution that they're creating. But to be perfectly honest, there are a lot of things you can do to minimize the impacts of gap whack. And to be perfectly honest, it's not a great solution. Yeah, sure, but I don't see a better one. And that's
right,
it's yeah.
With the helicopter cam, the aerial view, there was about maybe a third of a car length between the 14 and the 27. So you can't really put that on either driver. And here's on board with Jim Brooks. Here's the thing I think that really hurt Jim Brooks and his getting involved in this wreck. I was really surprised that it took as long as it did for a caution to come out with a car flipping and barrel rolling over in turn 3. I think the yellow flag came out maybe when Brooks was only about 4 or 5 car lengths away from the disabled 27. So, you know, when the caution's not out, you got to keep your foot in the throttle in the closing stages of this thing until you see that yellow flag.
Yes and no. For Jim Brooks, so there's a few things to sort of discuss in that vein, and number one is that, yeah, it's a race at the end of the day, and you got to try and make as many positions up. But Jim would have had a view of it on corner entry to 3 and 4, and the caution came out just after he entered 3 and 4. Now, once you're in 3 and 4 and you're committed, the best thing that you can do is lift off and apply 5 to 10% of brake pressure at most. If you apply any more than that, the car just pushes straight up the track. You've got no control over what your destiny is. So he's done everything he possibly can to try and avoid it. Cars just bounce down. That's bad luck. There's nothing that can be done there.
Well, Scott, if I told you that with less than 10 to go at Gateway, we had all 5 of our top 5 in the point stands involved in wrecks and only one of them still running with engine damage, what would you have said?
With this league and how much I defend their driving standards and how much I talk about their ability to improve and look at things in their systems, I would have said, you've got to be kidding. Like, that doesn't happen in this league. And to be perfectly honest, take a look at the standings tonight and how things have evolved. This isn't the standard that Dark Horse normally presents. This is just a freak race, and sometimes that happens. You know, we've all seen those races that go caution. Dark Horse, those, I think this is the first time that's actually ever happened in my commentating career at Dark Horse, and to take out the quality of drivers, it happens to everyone. That is the critical thing to take away from here, is that look at the quality of drivers that are out. Sorry,
yeah, and I agree with you 100%. And the thing that interests me as well is, you know, we talked about here at the beginning of the evening just how much of a part Gateway has played into eventually determining if you're battling for the championship or winning the championship. I mean, look at some of the names that are out of the race here tonight. I mean, who would have thought that Gateway was going to be a place that they would have to kind of mount a little bit of a comeback trail heading into Kansas next week, as it's going to be 6 laps to go this time, and all of a sudden, Eric Schaus, new life breathed into his opportunity to win this race. Yari Brubacher right there in the 2nd spot. Nunez hasn't won this race yet.
No, absolutely not. But critically, have a look at Matt Wagner now. All of a sudden, he's showing a turn of speed. He's going to go to the outside here, and I actually think he's favored on Schaus here if he can turn this car down nicely and get a run.
Matt Wagner came to pit road under this last caution, as did Haisung and Morales, so he would have fresher tires than the drivers ahead of him. Nunez, 19-lap-old tires, 14-lap-old tires for Brupacher, and 18-lap-old tires for Schaus.
Here he
so
goes.
in terms of grip, advantage to Wagner.
Yeah, and this is critical. Schaus is obviously trying to... The cork in the bottle here is Brupacher. They're being grouped up by the lead car that's offering them drafting support, backing them up a little bit. I think Wagner's going to complete this move when they get down to turn 1. Look at where the draft is going. He's got a wing ahead. This is now Wagner's corner.
Jeff Haisung now up there into the top 5. There he is.
Schaus is
in the
high.
black and red 18. He's going to try and go for 4th on Schaus.
Three.
Up the middle, 3 wide. Might be alongside the right rear of Matt Wagner going into 3.
And if you'd have said at the start of this race that Matt Wagner would come from the position that he was in to be in contention, and this is critical, Wagner needs this to be clean now for the remainder of his season. Brupacher's going to have a crack.
Brupacher coming into this race, only 2 starts on the season, best finish of 9th, but he got a little tight there off of 2, opens the door for Matt Wagner to go for 2nd.
And now Luis Nunez is on old tires defending from Matt Wagner's fresh tires. Cold tires don't mean a thing. Those things are warmed up, baby. We got a race on our hands.
Here comes Matt Wagner. We talked about Forsyth trying to be the first 2-time winner on the
Here he is,
season.
he got it.
Wagner's looking to do the same. Oh, he's going to slide up, makes contact with the 14. They're still going to be side by side down the back straightaway. Double wide, 2 rows deep. Contact! Into the grass. I think he saved it. No caution. We are going to take the white under green flag conditions. Nunez to the inside of Wagner heading to 1.
And Wagner's got the preferred line here. And he's got the better tires. This is Matt Wagner's. He's going to run away with this thing.
Really tight there off of 2 for Nunez. Open the gap. 3, 4 car lengths for Matt Wagner. Through 3 and 4, the night did not start out well for Wagner, involved
And
in
Nunez.
early caution. He's
Nunez is
going to
gonna
come
lose it.
around to win.
Jeff Haisung takes P2.
Wow, photo finish for the runner-up spot, 16 1,000ths. Wagner and Haisung, who, let's be honest, spent maybe 75 to 80% of this race running in 7th and 8th. They're P1 and P2 by the end of the night. The 2 strongest cars of the evening, Nunez and Schaus, they have to settle for 3rd and 4th.
Oh my word. And Matt Wagner would have come in tonight. He would have taken a look at qualifying and he would have gone, you know what? We're just going to grab some points. Oh, to come away with the win. And what a result for Jeff Haisung as well. He's been having okay races. He's not been having great races. And I was talking to him last night after the IR18. He had great races and he would finish about 8th. Tonight, he has a medium race and he takes away a P2. That man is going to be so happy with the podium.
Matt Wagner going to be the first driver to have 2 wins on the season, and he does it in back-to-back weeks, piggybacking off of his first win of the season last time out at New Hampshire. It is the first time since back in mid-September that a driver has gone back-to-back here in the Dark Horse Racing Series, and a little celebration there with Luis Gonzalez Nunez as well, who's going to bring it home in the podium. And you know, if you think about it here too, you look at our entire top 3. You know, comeback runs for all of them, but maybe in different ways. A comeback run for Wagner and Haisung, both collected up in the early incident, but for Luis Gonzalez Nunez, after the hardship of leading the most laps last week at New Hampshire, wrecking from the top position, yes, he didn't get the checkered flag, but a podium finish has to boost his spirits after the hardships of last week.
Oh, for sure. And look, to be perfectly honest with you, if Nunez, with that last pit stop, and with that last caution, Nunez, it's a Hamilton versus Verstappen type scenario from Abu Dhabi. He has to stay out. He absolutely has to stay out. Unfortunately, that's the consequence in this incident, is that the guys behind you with the fresher tires at the tail end of what was an aggressive run, and you know, he was hunting down Forsyth and he was having to burn his tires to get there. The gap that he was burning when he got to Forsyth was actually shrinking. So Forsyth's times compared to Nunez was actually starting to equalize. I was sort of sitting here and going, Forsyth, if he can hang on to this one for maybe another 5 laps, he actually might hold off for the race win. Well, it didn't end up happening. What did end up happening was that Nunez did get aggressive on those tires. He burned them up. Man, that's racing. And I think what Nunez is thinking to himself at this point in time is, look, they slip away sometimes, but boy, wasn't the racing fun tonight. And I think the whole field can say that.
You know, it's very interesting when you look at Matt Wagner's stats coming into tonight's race as we show you this evening's finishing results. You go back to Season 3. He won the season opener. Had to wait all the way until the very end of the year in the season finale to get his second win of that season. You go to last year. He ended up winning race number 5, but then he had to wait till the next to the last race of the season at Texas to get win number 2. Didn't take him long to get to 2 wins here in Season 5, back-to-back victories in the first 4 races of the season.
And that's going to be a whole host of points as well. Remember, we are. This was race number 4 on the season, and all of a sudden, Matt Wagner's come out on a night when Nick de Groot doesn't score a whole big bank of points, and he has put down a big old fat W. That is critical. This race for the championship, you thought, de Groot's just going to run a consistent season here and it's over. Well, he slipped up. Now all of a sudden, it's blown wide open.
Yeah, let me work the calculator here again. The race winner, bonus points notwithstanding, gets 50 points. De Groot's going to get a total of 16 points here tonight for his 14th place finish. That is a total of 34 points gained right there for Matt Wagner. If we don't count in bonus points for race win or anything, he has the points lead cut down to 15 points going into Kansas next week.
That's a race. It is on, and keep your eyes on in the background, Luis, because I have a feeling he's going to start to push his way forward as well. He won't burn down anywhere near the same amount of margin to Nick de Groot as Matt Wagner has here tonight, and indeed the gap between himself and Matt Wagner has actually opened fractionally, but keep your eyes on him. He's a dark horse that is out there in the Dark Horse Racing Series.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to talk with him in just a moment here as he's going to pick up his second podium finish on the season, and I believe we do have him standing by. So let's talk with tonight's third place finisher, Luis Gonzalez Nunez. Hey, Luis, Scott and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey, got you.
And a great race for you here tonight. We talked about the hardship of last week, needing a good run here tonight. Out in front for a good portion of this thing, almost picking up the victory. But, man, describe that final run to the checkered flag, because it was crazy to call up here, but I can only imagine what it was like being in the cockpit of one of these DW12 cars.
That's great. That's really crazy. I tried to give the dirty air to Eric to try to hit pass to Grupacker, but I don't know. I said I start to see the Matt Wagner faster. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know. I didn't come onto the pit lane to new tires. I really didn't think it. I think it in the last moment, but fuck. I really was a really big mistake. But really, it's very intense. So in the last lap, I almost when he passed me, Wagner, I almost touched him. I really saw very close the wheel on my front wheel, and I almost lost it in the turn 3 and the last turn. That's why I lost the second position. So I prefer to just give it away and don't do something stupid, because I don't wanna lose this position. So anyways, it was a really nice one, but really tough. I really sorry for Craig, because it was a big neck collar, so very bad for him. So anyways,
I mean, that's life, isn't it, Luis? It's not just as simple as saying you're the fastest car out here, you're automatically going to win the race. And you went through those emotions last week. You were strong on the early portions of the run tonight, and then sort of the middle and late portions of the run that sort of faded back to the other guys. It's so difficult to keep the mentality going as a race car driver. Talk to us about, did it feel like you might have been losing things? Did you get sort of flashbacks to last week from New Hampshire?
Actually, yes. When I practice before to the race, I start to make like a faster lap on things. So even the qualifying, the setup is really, really tough. So I really tried to going down, put the fourth gear, and after that going to the fifth and sixth. So, but the car is losing. It's really loose, the car on the exit to the turn 2. So I really thinking about. That's why I didn't fight it with Eric. I really expect to the mistake or something like that with Eric. Actually, when I saw Eric going out to the pit and lost many seconds on my screen. It's like okay, so I know Craig did the same thing about the old tires. I changed the new tires and things. So I thought it's the victory, easy victory, because I catch Craig on there. So I thinking about too about the last race last week. So like okay, I don't want to screw. I gonna wait it for the last on the specific moment. I wanna wait it for turn 2 to going up and down and try to get the air like what I did. But I didn't expect to the net color. So it's like okay, so new fight, new things, 8 laps to go. So okay, so let's finish this race. I know Grupacker they have the same almost tire that me, and Eric and 100% don't have it because I have old tires, really old tires. I have my screen here, so I really thinking about let's save it. I don't want to screw up. I don't wanna feel like a last week, but that's terrible. Like I was first for all the race, and for one stupid thing, like okay, I'm gonna pass this guy on there on the first line, so I lost the position, I lost everything. But now it's like okay, so I wanna be relaxed and just bring home maybe the podium or something like that.
He definitely did, getting the third position here tonight. It's going to be interesting to see if this can continue the consistency into next week at Kansas. No doubt about it. You've been up there in the forefront of our screens week after week. We know that every week you've got a fast race car. We know it's going to look a little bit different when we get to Kansas next week. But man, Luis, congratulations on a tremendous performance here tonight. Now we'll give you the opportunity to thank some sponsors and do some shout outs.
Yes, I wanna say in English this. I read this is my last race with my last team, my former team, Nike Racing team. So this really was a pressure. I wanna send this video for them. So I wanna say thank you for Sim Racing 24/7. We have a amazing this 2022 year. So we wanna keep it strong this year with the team, or maybe we wanna find somebody for fight the next season, the Dark Horse. Yeah, next week I gonna debut the new skin. So let's see let's see what is good for that. And I'm gonna say thank you, my mom. He's watching me in my country, so I say thank you for her for watching me. Esto es para ti, esta victoria, o sea, este tercer lugar para ti. Y espero que sigamos bien fuerte en esto y vamos con todo para este año 2022. I wanna say thank you for her. I wanna be strong for this year, and thank you guys for everything and for the amazing broadcasting today. And let's see it next week on Kansas. So it's a very nice track. So I already running in another league. So let's see what happened on there, and I'm really excited for the next week.
Just before we let you go there, Luis, can I just say a big thank you to you, because you really put on a show tonight. That was some of the best racing I've seen in these cars, and at this circuit where it's so tough to get good close racing together. That was phenomenal.
Thank you so much. I really tried to. Do. I really thinking about it in between the viewers and me. It's really tough to try to pass. I don't want to screw up something. I don't want to be sorry for what I say, but I don't want to be an asshole to try to do something stupid. But I really try to my best, and I thank you. I'm grateful to you enjoy everything, and let's see, and I hope next week you're gonna be showman or show in this league, and let's see. I'm really excited, I'm really happy, and yeah, let's see for next week. I'm really excited, and thank you so much, guys, for the thank you, and see you next week.
Right, we're certainly looking forward to it as well. That's Luis Gonzalez Nunez, your third place finisher here tonight at Gateway in the LMCgear.com 150. Congratulations once again, Luis.
Thank you so much. See you next week.
All right, let's see if we can get our runner-up finisher here tonight. I actually would like to go back and look through the statistics here to see the last time that he finished up inside of the podium, but let's see if we can talk with him. That's Jeff Highsong. Hey, Jeff, Scott and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I do. How you guys doing?
Oh man, we're doing good, but I'll bet you're doing great. I mean, we saw most of this race. You were running outside of the top 5, just kind of logging laps back there around the 7th or 8th position. Next thing we know, the late race caution comes out, a number of the front runners taken out, and we see you crossing the line in a photo finish, getting the 2nd position. I mean, how in the world did that happen?
I mean, the caution really helped out. I mean, I felt some. I had pace, and the tires would go away, and then I mean, it was just a mixture of things all throughout. But there at the end, it got fun with that yellow. Decided to take some tires, paid off.
Look, I mean, Jeff, it's not been. We were talking to you last night after the IR18 league, and you put together a really strong drive there. And what was it, a sixth place finish or 7th place finish?
I think it was like 9th.
Yeah,
somewhere back there.
You put together a middling drive over here. It's just been one of those seasons, hasn't it, where things you're doing everything you can possibly do, and things just don't go your way. And we've seen a lot of that from this league so far.
Yeah, I mean, this season's kind of been probably my worst one so far, but this race kind of fell together for me, and hopefully it changes things. But yeah, it's been one of those things where if I make a call, it's the wrong one, or if something happens, it goes not my way. So I'm glad this one kind of fell in at the end.
Well, you came into tonight's race 7th in the point standings, only 73. Well, actually, correction. That's actually the updated point standings. I just realized that they've been updated from tonight. So you're now sitting 7th in the point standings, 73 points out. But a thing that we've talked about week after week after week, it seems, is a lot of the guys that are running really well the week before, up there in the point standings, they get into trouble early. And then we see drivers that may have struggled the week before. They come up to the forefront and get the good finishes. So with the kind of trend we've seen here in the first 4 races of the season, does it still continue to give you hope that by the time we get to the end of the season, you could still be in that championship picture?
Yeah, those are the hopes. I'm just trying to keep the car clean. These first couple of tracks aren't really my greatest, so we're kind of going into the fun part of the season, I would say, for myself. So hopefully I can turn things around. But definitely been trying to keep the car safe, and it hasn't really paid off so far with some of these long green flag runs. You get behind the 8 ball, and then there's really nothing you can do.
Still a tremendous run for you here tonight. 2nd place, Jeff. Congratulations on that. And now we're going to give the opportunity so you can thank some sponsors and do some shout-outs.
Big shout out to you guys for the great job you guys always do. My mother-in-law for watching my little man. Shout out to the family. Shout out to the team. Shout out to Wagner for taking tires there at the end. Wish I could have got him. But yeah, thanks to you guys for the great job you guys do.
As Jeff Heisong brings it home 2nd place here tonight under the lights at Gateway. Congratulations once again, Jeff, and hopefully we can see you carry this momentum into Kansas next week.
Thanks, guys. You have a good one.
Did look back. Jeff Heisong's last podium finish, September 29th of last year, race number 4 of season 4 at Iowa Speedway, and he betters what was the 3rd place position then to a 2nd place position here tonight. Let's now go down to victory lane. 2nd straight week, we get to talk with Matt Wagner, who, after the finish here tonight, 2nd in the point standings, only 14 points officially out of the points lead heading into Kansas. Hey, Matt, Scott, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. Have you got us?
I'm here, shocked and amazed.
Well, yeah, I mean, Scott will tell you, a lot of times I'll pull out my crystal ball and I'll make predictions and everything. I've been asking the crystal ball ever since you took that checkered flag. How the heck did he do that? It's got no answer. Have you got an answer for us?
I don't. I really don't. Well, when I the final call, I was really questionable of why Luis stood out. So it's like, oh my God, he stood out. Are you serious? So I was the first car down pit road, and yeah, fresh tires, one of them worn tires, because fresh tires here mean everything. And I was getting so much of a run off of turn 2, and I was just eating their lunch and just I wasn't able to make it work.
So we're gonna have to cut after that comment. I'm gonna have to start calling you schoolyard bully Matt Wagner. He's coming out and he is eating your lunch, ladies and gentlemen. He doesn't play well with the other kids in the schoolyard, but look, it's been a tough couple of weeks. It's about getting that consistency of finishes, though. And I mean, to win a championship, you need consistency. You stuck 2 wins back to back. Now, the results won't tell the full story of the last 2 weeks worth of racing, but man, it's getting exciting up the top. De Groot and you are now separated by 14 points, and it seems like after that, it's a race for the best of the rest.
Yeah. There's been a note. We will have faster pairs next week. So yeah, it will be so we can keep this field going. I love racing with these guys. They're just good group of guys. Eric, Charles, Jim, Guy Hell, all my teammates too, and this league is so great. I mean, you guys, FRN, you guys do a hell of a job, and I really do appreciate it.
Well, he can take my lunch. I'll give him my lunch, but he's gonna have to beat me up to take my milkshake. Matt, we were talking about after the first incident, when a lot of the front runners were taken out. We saw that you spent a little bit of extra time on pit lane. I kind of threw out the possibility. It seemed like the same amount of time you spent last week when you had the nose replacement take place. But we saw that as the runs went on, the speed was there, but you weren't really gaining on the race leads. You were running similar lap times and everything. Was there damage you had to deal with for this race, or were you trying to maybe play some kind of an alternate strategy?
That we'll never know. I really don't know. I really have to look at the replay. I don't know if I had side pod damage or when I came into pits, because I was so scared that I had front wing damage. So I had to start in the back. And we did not have front wing damage. I was like, wow, okay. So during that restart, a couple guys had a hard time get going, and then when that occurred, as I was watching everybody drive away, it's me pushing my car, overdriving it, getting too much heat in the tires, and there I start going backwards, and that's not a good sign. So during the next run, I tried to be a little bit conservative, and it kind of paid off a little bit, but I couldn't see the lap times what the leaders were running compared to me.
Well, Matt, I'll tell you what, congratulations first off on second win in a row, and it's going to make it a heck of a storyline for us when we get to Kansas next week. We saw De Groot get the early win, had the double points. That has been very swiftly cut into 14 points between yourself and him going into next week. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But, man, congratulations. It's time to hand the mic over to you for some Victory Lane thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Well, this is kind of an embarrassing shout-out. Actually, it's a bit of a heartbreaker for Mr. Charles Teed. I really feel bad for him. He's had a total of probably one full lap in the last two races. It's sorry, Charles. I mean, I love you, brother, but it sucks. It really does. And I've been on the other side of the shoe. You remember Las Vegas? Yeah, that's not. You don't want to be there. So, shout out to you guys. You guys put on a hell of a show for everybody. Shout out to my teammates.
We put on a hell of a show. Are you kidding? Yeah. You guys put on a hell of a show.
Huh? Who?
You guys put on the show.
No. Don't worry, my luck will run out next week. Shout out to my Area 51 teammates, Gael and Jim. They make everything possible for me. And of course, Dark Horse League. Love you guys. Eric, do a hell of a job, and Charles, too. So, guys, it's been fun. 2 in a row sounds pretty cool, but unfortunately, I think reality will start coming back next week. So, guys, you take care and have yourself a good night.
That's Matt Wagner. He's your winner here tonight at Gateway, win number 2 on the season. Once again, congratulations and best of luck when we get to Kansas next week.
Like always. See you, Scott and Seth.
See ya.
So a big win here tonight for the driver of the number 6. That is his 7th career win here in the Dark Horse Racing Series. It's the 3rd year in a row that he has had 2 wins. He had 1 win back in Season 2 where he had only 5 starts on the season. So it's interesting when you kind of look at that because to my knowledge, the only driver that has at least 2 victories in every season he has started here in the Dark Horse Racing Series is Nick de Groot, the former champion. So Things are looking really good here for Matt Wagner. I'm going to throw that's the pro. Here's the con, and he kind of alluded to it a little bit as well. Had hard luck in our first mile-and-a-half racetrack here at Las Vegas. We go for the second time this season to a mile-and-a-half next week at Kansas. What's some of the things that Matt Wagner is going to be looking at when we get there to try and do different than what happened at Las Vegas to keep this consistency going? Because I'll tell you what, when we looked at the hardship he had at Las Vegas, we maybe I kind of looked at it and said, yeah, he can recover, but it might take him 3-4 races to do so. He's been able to really mount a comeback in 2 races.
And it's just about consistency. I mean, making sure that you're not... Look, if that wreck is going to come early, making sure you're not part of it. But we heard him talk as well. They're looking at and they're talking about it, and they've already looks like they've come to the decision. They're going to add that fast repair. Why are they doing that? What is the whole reasoning behind that? Ultimately, they want their drivers to be able to go out there, race as hard and as fast as they can and as close as they can. Are our drivers professional racing car drivers? That's what we need to ask ourselves. Absolutely not. These guys are iRacing specialists. There's a couple guys in the field that have had real life gigs, but they haven't been, the tippy top, the best of the best. It takes a significant set of abilities to be able to race these cars as close as they do in real life, with the trust for other people like they have in real life. And ultimately, we're not there yet because we don't train, we don't practice in the same format as real life drivers do. So ultimately, do I think the fast repair is the best situation for us? Yes, because it's going to provide more entertaining racing with the ability for somebody to make a mistake and still keep themselves in. And that's what we want from these guys. And look, take the heartbreak from it. I know Nick de Groot's not too beat up about it. He's just like, oh, look, that's racing. You just got caught up in it. Sometimes the wreck just comes through and the wreck's got your name on it. It happened that way for him tonight. And you'll see Nick de Groot come out firing on all cylinders again next week. Will he make that adjustment, though, to his qualifying strategy? That's the kicker, I think.
And I'm 100% on board as well, in agreement in terms of putting that fast repair in. And I think the big reason is, you look at the run we had here in the final 10 laps of this race. There was a point last week where we had 3 or 4 drivers in close proximity, and we thought they were going to wreck, and they didn't. I mean, it was really hard racing at a very difficult track there. These guys have proven week after week, season after season, that they can race hard but clean. Let's be honest, maybe about 80% of the cautions we've had here in these first 4 races have been either just slight mistakes or things that are out of driver's control in terms of connection issues. It's not been that somebody has purposely gone out there, made a move that's going to put somebody in jeopardy, knowing the end result is you're going to end up with a wrecked race car. So I believe that fast repair is a good call by the admins to bring that back. It takes away the chance that a driver's day could be over just due to a slight mistake or something they have no control over.
Yeah, and that's it. It's millimeters. It's quarters of an inch is what we're talking about here, and it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. It is not easy, and these guys do a heck of a job at it. And at the end of the day, it's not all about saying, "Oh, we just want to keep people racing," or this is a safety blanket for those guys who aren't. It's not about that. We've proven that these guys can put on a show, and we'll put on a show without that fast repair there. However, we would like the situation to allow for closer racing with more results, and that's what they're going after at the end of the day. And ultimately, Kansas next week is going to be similar to it was Vegas that we were at previously. So the racing style is going to be a little bit similar, a little bit more of a focus on the tires though than you would have seen here tonight, and that'll be the main difference.
Should be a good one. We've had 4 very, very interesting races to start off the season. We've kind of had comers and goers week after week, different drivers up at the front of the field week after week, and I think it's just only going to continue to get better when we head to the Midwest at Kansas Speedway next week. I mean, the second time that drivers head to a mile-and-a-half configuration here in Season 5, and hope that you guys will join us for that next Wednesday night with the green flag scheduled to fly at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Scott, it's been a wild one here tonight at Gateway. Appreciate you joining me in the booth for this one.
Oh, look, I mean, I'll be back again next week. Are you kidding? The racing's fantastic here. I love this league.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to everybody that tuned in here tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage here. And until next Wednesday, for Scott Rankin, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your night as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flat Out Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flat Out Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flat Out Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flat Out Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.